Question 11. We are given a frequency table describing the weights of parcels. So 8 parcels are between 0 and 2 kilograms, 14 are between 2 and 4, so on and so forth. Part A, work out an estimate for the total weight of all 80 parcels. So the fact that we have 8 parcels, for example, between 0 and 2, we don't know their exact weights. They're anywhere between 0 and 2. So the fact that we're being asked for an estimate, the best guess is if it's between 0 and 2, then we pick the number that's halfway in the middle, also known as the midpoint. So I'm going to use 1 because it's halfway between 0 and 2. 3, 5, 7, 9, and 11 are all halfway in between their relevant terms in their interval. So that's basically saying now, using that as an estimate, we just kind of ignore this for now. We just assume they're 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, and 11. The fact that we have 8 of these means that the mini total of all of those weights would be the product, 1 times 8 being 8. We do exactly the same with each one, trying to find the mini totals of the weights within each interval. So 3 times 14 gives us 42, 5 times 26 gives us 130, so on, so forth, to get our mini totals there. So that gives us the totals for each row, which then afterwards, if we want to get a grand total, then we add all of these together. If we do that, we end up with 444 kilograms. On to the next one. Complete the cumulative frequency table. Now we're going to need to use this table here just to highlight the relevant information, being these things in green, because of the fact that they are frequencies. Cumulative frequency is simply the accumulation of frequencies. Oh, a mess of that. The accumulation of frequencies. So we are accumulating each of the previous frequencies. Notice we have the 0 at the beginning. That means that we involve the first frequency, and then we're building it up. So instead of it being between 0 and 2 and 4, the next one would be between 0 and 4. And we just build it up from that. So the first one, 0 to 2, is exactly the same. We have 8. The second one is the 8 and 14. So that gives us 22. And we continue adding on like that. 0 to 6 would be the 0 to 2, the 2 to 4, and the 4 to 6. Or you can just add the 4 to 6 to the previous number. Like I said, you accumulate these frequencies. So if we do so, our 22 plus 26 gives us 48. Or 48 plus 17 gives us 65. Or 65 plus 10 gives us 75. And then our 75 plus the 5 at the end will give us 80. Important thing to note, this should always be your total amount, total numbers. So we had 80 parcels here. If you've accumulated all the frequencies, then that basically means you've accumulated all the parcels. So the fact that we have 80 here at the end is a good sign. Part C, on the grid, draw a cumulative frequency graph for your table. So using this information in this table, we're going to plot and draw a graph. It's important to note that your cumulative frequency graph has a shape of an S, typically. And when we draw it, we use the values, not that's in the middle, we use the values that are at the end, up to 2 kilograms. There were 8 parcels that were up to 2. There were 22 parcels that were up to 4, 48 that were up to 6, so on and so forth. So those in green form the x-coordinate, and the values in red form the y-coordinate. So 2, 8, I plot that on our graph. 2, 8 is going to be here, based on the scale of that. 4 and 22 is there. 6 and 48 here. 8 and 65. 65 is a weird one because it's in between, but halfway in between there would be 65. 10 and 75, same again, we're in between 2 squares, and then 12 and 80. Now it's important to note the most common mistake people make here is that they use the midpoints, they don't use those numbers in green. If you have that, your S-curve will always end up looking something like this, where you've basically only used half the graph. There'd be this big space here at the end. If you ever have a graph where the paper's been given like this, and you're not using at least half of, like more than half of the graph paper, let's say, your graph's wrong. They don't give you this scale just to leave it blank. Like, the only reason they've given you it is so that you can use it. Now, that's not to say that you're going to go absolutely to the edge. You've got technically a bit of dead space here, but you don't have half of a graph of dead space. So, play join the dots now. Important that you start from 0, because technically there were no parcels that had 0 weight. Whether or not you use straight lines or curves entirely up to yourself, it's supposed to be a curve. Alright, so the way in which we join these dots is supposed to curve so that you end up with an S. The straight lines are also accepted. That there would be fine. Alright, part D. Use the graph to find an estimate for the number of parcels that weighed less than 5.2. So on our graph, 5.2 kilograms would be here. Using the graph, you have to show your workings here with this. We go from 5.2 up to wherever our graph is, and to be honest, you'll have a variety of answers here depending on whether or not you've done a straight line or even how you've done your curve. You're looking for an approximate answer here. There's not sort of a one answer only. Based on my graph, I'm getting this here, which using the scale is 36. Now, to make sure I answer the question correctly, how many weighed less than 5.2? So that means we're interested in the number of people, or sorry, the number of parcels that are less than 5.2, which means on this occasion 36 is our answer.